Welcome to The Explainer. So today, we're going to dive into one of the most treasured ideas from the Buddhist tradition, what's called the unshakable mind. Now, you might hear that and think it sounds, I don't know, superhuman, but the ancient teachers actually saw it as something incredibly simple and close to home. We're going to break down this idea of equanimity, what it really means to find a deep, lasting peace, even when life is, completely unpredictable. So let's start with the big question you see here. How can we find peace in a world that is constantly changing? I mean, it's a question we all grapple with, right? But instead of jumping into some complex theory, we're going to start with a story. Stories just have this incredible way of teaching us, and this one, it's about a very wise master's very human moment. It reveals so much more about this practice than any definition ever could. All right, so let's set the scene. I want you to picture an old master living way up in the mountains back in a time when the world moved, well, a lot more slowly. He had spent pretty much his whole life in quiet contemplation, and he was known far and wide for this incredible, unshakable calm. Seriously, people would travel for days just to sit near him. Being in his presence was like sitting next to a giant, ancient, deeply rooted tree. He had just spent decades patiently cultivating this steadiness that was so reassuring to everyone around him. So one cold morning, late in his life, the master's out walking with a young student along the shore of a mountain lake. The air is crisp, that kind of cold that feels clean. There's mist hanging low over the water. And the young student, just full of life, declares he's going to swim across. And with this joyful shout, he just dives right in, his strokes powerful and sure as he heads for the far shore. And here's the thing. This is the pivot point of the whole story. As the master stood there watching, something inside him just stirred. It wasn't some big, loud thought. It was just a flicker. A tiny little spark. Maybe it was pride or a little bit of competitiveness, or maybe just a sweet memory of his own younger, stronger body. But in that one moment, that tiny, almost invisible impulse was enough to pull him right off center. And he decided, I'm going to swim across too. So he steps into the water, and the cold is a total shock, way deeper and more biting than he expected. His body, you see, was just older than his spirit remembered it being, and stroke by stroke, his strength just started to fade. He didn't make it. Now, the takeaway here isn't about failure, not at all. It's a story about how deeply, fundamentally human we all are. Even with a whole lifetime of wisdom, a single spark of pride was enough to throw him off balance. And that shows us that equanimity, it's not some state of permanent perfection we achieve. It's a practice of returning over and over and over again to our center. That little moment of imbalance for the master just goes to show how subtle the forces that pull us off center really are. So what is this quality that he momentarily lost? What even is equanimity? Let's get into it, because honestly, it is so often misunderstood. The ancient texts, they describe it not as something cold or distant, but as a mind that is luminous, bright, and truly deeply alive. Okay, this definition you're seeing, it's everything. It's a deep and steady presence within experience. See, it's not about building walls to shut the world out. It's about being able to meet whatever comes your way with an open and a steady heart. I like to think of a mountain. A mountain doesn't fight the wind, right? It just lets the wind blow past it. The wind is still blowing, for sure, but the mountain doesn't move. That, right there, is equanimity, the ability to feel the wind without being carried away by it. And this chart really just nails the common misunderstanding. People hear the word equanimity and they picture this, this gray, emotionless robot. But look at this comparison. It's not about being indifferent or detached. It's the exact opposite. It's about being open and available. It is absolutely not the absence of feeling. It's the ability to feel things really deeply, but from a place of stability. It's a mind that is luminous and responsive, not some wall you build against life. In fact, you could say it's the most alive a mind can be because it's not being twisted up by wanting this and pushing away that. So how do we actually cultivate this? Well, the tradition offers this really beautiful analogy of a goldsmith. Picture a craftsperson patiently working with a piece of raw gold. They heat it up, let it cool, and they look for any impurities, the dross. The key is they don't add anything to the gold. They just gently, carefully remove what's hiding its true nature. And with each cycle, another layer of impurity is gone. And what's left? Well, the texts say it becomes pure, bright, pliant, and luminous. And that's exactly what our mind becomes, not by forcing it, but by patiently removing the reactivity that covers up its natural radiance. Okay, so if equanimity is our mind's natural state, kind of like pure gold, then why on earth is it so rare? The ancient teachers, they had a really clear answer for this.
It's because we are constantly, all day long, being pushed and pulled by these powerful, invisible forces they call the 8 worldly winds. You can think of these as the emotional weather of being a human. They blow through every single one of our days.
And here they are, these 4 pairs. Just take a second and think about your own day. How much of your inner life is shaped by these forces? The pleasure of a good cup of coffee and the pain of a headache. The gain of a new project at work and the loss of something you valued. The praise you get from a colleague and the blame you feel when you make a mistake. That quiet desire to be seen, fame, and that little ache of being overlooked, obscurity. See, these winds aren't a problem we need to solve. They're just the nature of life. The real question is, what happens inside of us when they blow? There's this classic parable that illustrates our relationship with these winds just perfectly. A farmer finds a wild horse. All the villagers come out. Oh, what good fortune, such a gain. But then his son gets hurt trying to ride it, and the villagers all say, oh, what a loss, such bad fortune. But then the army comes through town, conscripting all the able-bodied young men for a war, and the injured son is spared. What looked like bad fortune turned out to be good. The point is, we are so quick to judge, to celebrate, or to grieve long before we could possibly know the whole story.
And here it is, the farmer's profound, simple response to every single one of these events. Perhaps. Now, that is not indifference, that's spaciousness. It's the wisdom to not grab onto one chapter of the story and call it the end. It reveals a mind that isn't being thrown back and forth by the winds of gain and loss, but one that is allowing life's full, messy, unpredictable story to just unfold. It's a mind that is resting in equanimity.
So, that farmer's perhaps is what a stable mind sounds like. How do we build that kind of foundation for ourselves, one that's strong enough to handle those winds? Well, it's not just about gritting your teeth and using willpower. The teachings point to 2 core pillars that work together to create this incredible inner steadiness. Let's break this down. First, you've got balance, and that is rooted in the body. This is your anchor. It's about being grounded, centered in your physical self, not just lost up in the tornado of your thoughts. And second, you've got understanding, which is rooted in the mind. This is your compass. It's the ability to see things clearly, to look past your first knee-jerk reaction and see what's actually going on. Real, true stability comes from having both of these working together. Now, you know what's so cool about this? It is so incredibly practical. A teacher was once asked what his secret was for staying so steady all the time. And his answer? Feel your feet. That's it. So simple, right? Think about it. Most of the time, we lose our balance not because the wind is too strong, but because we weren't even standing in our own body when it hit. The body is the home the mind can always, always return to. Just bringing your attention to the simple physical feeling of your feet on the ground is a direct way to anchor yourself right here, right now, and to find that pillar of balance. So when we start to cultivate these things, that patient refining of the mind, the awareness of the winds, and those 2 pillars of stability, we're not actually creating something new. It's more like we're uncovering this profound stillness, this inner refuge that was there all along, just waiting for us beneath the noisy surface. This is such a powerful image. I want you to really picture this. The daily winds of praise and blame, gain and loss, pleasure and pain, all they do is stir up the surface. They create ripples, and yeah, sometimes they create some pretty big waves, but they never, ever reach the quiet at your core. There is a part of you that is already perfectly still, that is not touched by the weather on the surface. So the practice isn't about stopping the waves, it's about learning how to rest in the stillness of the depths you already have. This ancient quote just beautifully ties our whole exploration together. As a solid mass of rock is not stirred by the wind, so a sage is not moved by praise and blame. Now, the invitation here is not to become a hard, unfeeling rock that just deflects everything. The invitation is to become so deeply rooted in your own being, so connected to that deep, quiet lake inside that you can let the world's weather simply pass right through you. You feel it all, but you are not carried away. And that right there is the freedom of the unshakable mind. The question isn't whether the winds will blow, because they will. The question is whether we can remember the stillness that lies beneath.